Hi, so my name's Hannah Thompson. I'm a Professor of French and Critical Disability Studies at Royal Holloway, and I teach French language, French literature, comparative literature and translation studies in the Department of Languages, Literatures and Cultures. One of my favourite French texts is Boule de Suif by Guy de Maupassant, and actually I studied it myself for A-level French quite a long time ago. And what I really like about this text is that, because it's a short story, Maupassant is the absolute master of short stories. Every single word in it is important. He doesn't waste words. There's nothing that isn't relevant. And that makes it a really refreshing, exciting experience as a reader. I'm a big fan of close reading, which is when you really take account of the detail of the text and the author's choice of words. And a story like Boule de Suif is a great story to close read because every word is really important and relevant. And Maupassant uses language in a very precise way. And he uses it to convey his thoughts about the characters in a way which is very critical of some characters. He lets the reader work out how to feel about the characters, but he guides us with his choice of vocabulary. And he's very critical of the self-satisfied, greedy hypocrisy of the middle and higher class people in Rouen, in Normandy. And so what I like about the story is the way that he tells us how to feel about the characters in a very subtle way. So in the carriage, where the characters find themselves at the beginning of the story, we have a kind of representation of French society, of the different echelons of French society. And these characters react in quite predictable ways, which reveals their selfishness and their greed. The main character of the story is Boule de Suif, who is a kind of sex worker, a high-class prostitute, and therefore despised by the apparently upstanding moral members of the bourgeoisie in Normandy. However, her behaviour in the story is the only example of kind of good or moral behaviour. And despite this, she is rejected and despised by the other characters. And this is what I like about the story, that the narrator very clearly tells us how critical he feels about the character's behaviour without saying it in so many words. So it's by looking at the language and the metaphors, the imagery that are used in the text, that you can work out how the writer is manipulating us or convincing us to think about things in a specific way. So one example of that is the way that the woman, Boule de Suif, is described at the beginning of the story in terms of food. So her fingers are like sausages, her face is like an apple. She is very appetizing, she is attractive, and she's also the only person in the carriage who's brought food for the journey. So she herself is delicious, but so is the food that she's brought. And because she's a moral, upstanding character, she shares her food with everybody else in the carriage. And that's an act of selflessness which is completely unappreciated by the other characters throughout the story. And the rest of the story is about how they push her into doing something she doesn't want to do. And she doesn't want to do it because she's very patriotic and she doesn't want to sleep with a German oppression soldier in order to help the travellers. She's forced into doing this thing, and then afterwards, this is the absolute kind of twist of the story, she is then completely repudiated and ostracised by everybody else as soon as she's got them what they want. So it's a story about bourgeois hypocrisy, about the difference between appearance and reality. So you can appear to be noble and moral and upstanding and create an outward impression of respectability like the other characters, but actually behave terribly. Or you can have the reputation of being immoral because you're a prostitute, but actually behave with this kind of, moral goodness that puts the other characters to shame.